by facilitators, right, of an upcoming training. We love drones. We have some here displayed. We use them for cross-country to get beautiful aerial shots. So we'll be discussing all about drones and also some regulations. So here we have with us Nicholas, who's a graduate student from the University of Central Florida. We have Dr. Hawthorne, who is a professor. And then we have Lain, who's also a graduate student. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you
and
for having us.
And thank you for being here.
Yes.
Right? So let's start off talking about this partnership, obviously, that is with the University of Central Florida and the Coastal Zone Management Association, right?
Yeah, well, thank you again for having us. I appreciate the opportunity. With this partnership, we've been working with Coastal Zone Management and also the University of Belize for a couple years now to essentially provide free open data around drone imagery. And the importance of drone imagery is it provides very high resolution, up-to-date information of the coast and the islands of Belize. And so what we're able to do is use our imagery to replace the outdated and very grainy, poor resolution imagery that's available. And we use that imagery then to map things like docks, structures on the islands, seawalls, and solar panels on the islands as well. And so the partnership has been a real collaborative effort between us and the U.S. at the University of Central Florida, and then also our friends at the University of Belize and Coastal Zone Management. And today we're actually offering a training session with different organizations to fly the drones and learn more about how we can use this for science and for collaborative good for the public.
Now, I think, obviously, drones have become extremely popular in the past couple of years. And I was telling you during the break that it feels like just a couple of years ago, if you wanted anything from the air, you needed to get helicopters or planes to get images. Drones have completely changed that, and they're a lot more accessible to people for fun, but more importantly, can be used for things like science. Tell us about some of the innovative ways that drones have been incorporated in research, in maritime studies, and how perhaps you guys have been involved in that.
Sure. Do you want to?
Yeah, so like you were saying, so they're very low cost, they're very easily accessible, so they can be used in a multitude of fields. They're also relatively easy to use. There is a bit of a learning curve, but it's not too difficult after
Sounds
some
like
training.
You have some stories there, Timothy.
always stories of drones, yeah. So for us in sociology and GIS, just as Tim was saying, we use them to map the islands of Belize. We also use them down in Hopkins to map the village, and basically we're just using that to see a change over time. So the satellite imagery, it's very old, it's very outdated, and it's very poor resolution. So if we can, such as Tobacco Key here, if we can look at these islands and return to them, we can see what changes are occurring to them.
Yeah.
They're also used in a variety of other fields like biology to monitor plant life, agriculture is a big thing. Architecture, engineering, you can use them to monitor water towers, buildings, all sorts of things. Pretty much anything you can think of is very likely a use for a drone within that field.
Yeah. And I'm looking at this image and I'm thinking of one of the particular usage that it may be helpful for is monitoring vegetation in different areas. Is that being done?
I'm sure that is being done. I've done some reviews of articles within the field of biology where they have looked at that more in terms of like invasive species, but I'm sure it's being done with looking at other plant life as well.
One of the things we also hope to do with the imagery is to have a change analysis over time. So our goals with the project are to essentially map all of the areas that are of interest every year, and then over 3 to 5 years to monitor change. So for example, from the imagery, you could show loss or growth of mangroves over time. So that would be a great study to support some of the reef health and the island viabilities as well.
Or erosion if we're seeing it in a particular area. Now, because they're so easily accessible, obviously there are some challenges. Where you can fly them, what's the proper protocol. Tell us how you incorporate this into your training.
Sure. So the regulations are different in the United States and in Belize as well. So basically we just try to operate as safely as possible. So our number one concern always is safety. We want to monitor the airway. Is it a restricted airway? Is it near an airport? There's actually a feature on some of the drones that prevents you from flying near an airstrip. So there's some built-in safety protocols, but we always try to exercise caution in understanding not only the task at hand, but how to operate as efficiently and safely as possible.
So tell us about the training that you'll be holding. As you mentioned, it's going to be with organizations. Obviously, I'd imagine they're environmental organizations. And what are some of the topics that you're hoping to cover?
Sure, absolutely. So with the training is funded through a grant to Coastal Zone from World Bank and PACT. And so from that funding, what they've provided is a day-long training. And so in that training, we'll begin with, just similar to this, an overview of our project and our goals. Yeah. And then from there, we'll work through a training guide that we've created. Nick has put together a really nice essentials of how to fly the drone, how to then collect the imagery in the field, and then also process the imagery. One of the nice things about our images, you see the example here of Tobacco Key. That's just one of sort of our glamour shots, as we call it. But one of the nice things that you can do with the imagery is you can shoot straight down and take a photo every 1 to 2 seconds. And then at the end, stitch all of those images together as you would a quilt, right? And from there, you can create a really nice, what's called an orthomosaic, a composite image of the entire area around the island as well. So we'll be talking through how you process that imagery and what you can do with it as well. And then in the afternoon, around 1 o'clock, we'll actually be down in Memorial Park working with our partners to actually do a flight demonstration. So several of the organizations that are there actually have drones. They'll bring theirs and we'll talk through some of the best practices that we've learned. And then at the end of the day, we'll have sort of a future discussion brainstorming session to see how we can use these for good, how we can share the data with the public and do more interesting analyses that can benefit Belizeans and researchers around the world to protect the islands of the Belize Barrier Reef.
Yeah. Now, obviously, having the imagery alone can help you to visually monitor. What else can you do? Are there calculations you can make based on the depth or the height of the photograph or image itself? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so with our drones that we have right now, we can't get depth as easily, so we can roughly calculate distance and build like a 3D model based off that. So if a picture is straight down of here and then it goes here, it can kind of measure the distance between those two images to get like the height of this wall. There are other drones and other attachments that you can connect to drones to do LiDAR data, so you can get that very high accuracy depth information. Yeah. But for us, it's just strict 2D imagery like this for the time being.
Yeah. Now, the organizations, and we know they have been using them for some really interesting studies or monitoring tools, already have drones and they have been using it. What do you hope your training will add to what they're already doing?
Yeah, I think one of the reasons that we've worked really closely with Coastal Zone and really enjoy that partnership is the ability to bring people together. And I think that's one of the great things. We learned this in the US and same here in Belize, is when partnerships form and collaborations and organizations work together, they're able to share resources to minimize cost, help taxpayers and community members as well. So I think that partnership leads to some creativity, cost saving, and ingenuity. And so really our goal is to bring people together because we all have common goals. So through sharing data in an open format, such as this imagery, it allows more than a team like us to talk about why it's important. It allows for different organizations with their goals to look at the imagery and create something really unique together.
And I'm not sure if you can speak to it, but what are some of the regulations here in Belize when using a drone?
There are regulations.
Yeah, there are several. So we actually have permits through civil aviation and then also NICH as well. So NICH provides the filming requirements and for the production of the imagery and the videography. And then civil aviation has several rules. There's a lot of them, but the main ones that are important to the audience that's listening today are really the height restrictions. So we keep ours, a few hundred feet above the ground. We keep them away from airports. So there are no-fly zones around the municipal airport here in the city, the bigger airport obviously out in Ladyville, and some of the landing strips out on, for example, Key Cocker and San Pedro. Beyond that, the other issues are, being cognizant of the fact that you're flying over people, and so trying to avoid flying over people when at all possible, and then recognizing, public versus private property as well. So one of the things that we've really done around the safety initiative is when we fly. So we go out to these islands, we're on a boat. The first thing we do is we're always with a Belizean boat captain, and so that boat captain talks to whoever the landowner or the property manager might be as we arrive and gets the permission, and we have a conversation. And one of the nice things about this particular model of the drone is on the controller, it actually has a live feed on our iPad that allows us to show folks in the field what we're doing. And that we have found has been a really great safety conversation and just a conversation starter about the importance of the imagery. Because people, they're wary of drones, and rightfully so. There's a lot of privacy concerns and safety concerns. But what we have found in every example and working over the last year and a half on this project has been people have been very receptive when they see what the imagery can do and when they hear of the goals of the collaboration as well.
Yeah. So you have 2 students with you. Tell us how this ties into your overall programs.
Yeah, so my thesis work for my paper that I'm writing for school is mostly dealing with the open reef work. So we use the imagery to engage in conversation with island inhabitants. So for example, when I did work on Key Cocker this past summer, I was interviewing a lot of people. I was showing them the imagery of Key Cocker that was currently available in the satellite imagery, and then showing them the drone imagery that we're collecting. And with those differences, I'm able to see what sort of changes have occurred to the island over time. And for my thesis in particular, it's looking at how people are adapting to environmental stressors, so i.e. climate change. And so what they're doing, where either mangrove restoration is occurring or degradation, or if they're building up seawalls, or if they're putting more effort into more natural restoration efforts as well.
So for my dissertation research, it's focused in Hopkins, and I've used the drone to fly and map the entire village of Hopkins, all the way from the lagoon down to City River. And we've digitized it and gone in and looked at all the structures. And so I'm analyzing sense of place, how people interact with the environment and their landscape, and how decisions are made sort of based on their emotional or dependent attachment to different locations. So I'm using the drone as sort of to establish baseline data to then work off of.
Another component of the work that both Nick and Lain are doing is part of our outreach strategy. So we have the mini drone here. This is a Parrot Mambo mini drone. So one of the things that both of these two have actually done is to work with youth in Hopkins, and also this weekend Nick will be going out to Key Cocker to work with our friends at the Ocean Academy. So we have worked with kindergarten through high school kids here in Belize to allow them to experience flight. So they start flying the drones, we show them the imagery that we collect with the bigger drone, they get to fly the mini drone, and we talk about the importance of these technologies for science.
Yeah.
So both Nick and Lain have been really great partners in setting that up with community. And so far what we've done is we've worked with about 150 kids here in Belize doing this project, and we're going to continue that on follow-up trips as well.
And what's that experience like?
It's incredible. So the kids are so excited when we're out mapping with the DJI Phantom 4. They come and they look around the controller and they want to see what we're seeing. So it's really great to be able to put them in the pilot seat with the mini drones, because it's safe. Can't really do too much damage, and there's a little camera.
Too much of a loss.
Exactly.
That one, yeah.
And there's a camera on the bottom, so they can actually with the kids in Florida and in Belize as well, we have a pre and post disaster scene. So we can actually simulate what we're doing with the real drones and have them compare images from before and after a disaster strike. So they're seeing how this technology can be applied. And hopefully we're inspiring them to maybe look into some of the STEM fields.
And another part of what we do with the youth is to actually encourage their learning, encourage their partnership, and encourage their confidence in learning science, especially for young females as well. And so one of the things we also do is we actually use social media to have the students challenge other students around the world that are doing similar things. So we have a partner in Australia that works with us through an organization called She Flies, where we have our Belizean students actually pick their favorite images, explain what they're seeing in the images, and then they send them to Australia through Facebook and ask Australia to send their similar images back of the reef in Australia. And it's just a really exciting thing.
Yeah. We win.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But it's just it's a very exciting opportunity to say, hey, kids in Belize or kids in Australia, you're getting to talk to another country across the world. That's really cool.
What I like about what you're explaining that you're doing is the introduction of new technology to children at a younger age. And I think oftentimes people shy away from it because of the expense that may be associated. What do you find to be the learning curve for the younger kids in being able to manipulate the drones and understanding how to get the imagery that they want?
It's incredible. So putting these the mini drones in the hands of even some of the younger kids, they're amazing, and they teach each other. That's the most incredible thing. So 5 minutes with this, and they're already like way advanced compared to some of the adults that we've trained. And then they go and they teach each other. So it's really nice to see that interaction, and for them to even interpret the imagery differently than we would. So some of the applications that they think of to use drone technology is on a complete different spectrum than we would. So it's really inspiring to see how the youth engage with each other and with the technology, and they pick it up so quickly.
So now you piqued my interest. What are some of their suggestions as to what you can use it for?
So one of the kids, actually, we do little responses afterwards, so they write what they think it could be used for, and they were talking about mapping a baseball game, or using it to find locations for pizza places throughout their city. So it's just a completely different perspective, but still valid and really exciting. So we want to inspire it through their eyes and see how they might apply it.
Any different in Keycocker? You were in Keycocker?
Yeah, so I haven't run the workshop there yet, but I'm very interested to see what the students are, what their views are for how drones can be used out there. Back in the States when I've done it as well, I've gotten a lot of environmental stuff as well, so people talking about the reef or looking at forest spreading or degradation. But it's a very exciting, the energy when we're running those workshops is electrifying.
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah, and like Lain was saying, the kids, they pick it up so quickly. It's almost natural for them. Yeah. We almost didn't even have to explain too much.
Yeah, because that's what I wanted to know. How long does it take to learn to manipulate one of the bigger ones?
The bigger one, it's a little bit steeper of a learning curve. There's a lot more going on. There's a lot more safety issues with it, so we really have to stress the training that's with that. With the mini one, we kind of show them how to fly it, hand them the iPad or whatever device we're using, and they can pretty much easily pick it up after that. With these, these blades, they're a lot sturdier. They can do a lot of damage, so we can't put them in an enclosed setting, and we usually try to have people have a little bit more training on the device before we let them have a go at it by themselves.
Although many people just purchase one and try on the road.
That's true.
Yeah. So what are some of the do's and don'ts? I understand you have your training. It's going to be a lot more technical than what you can share with us. But for people who do have one at home, and what would be your advice?
Keep within the regulations that are laid out. Whatever rules are in place, you definitely want to follow those. You also want to be really careful with the conditions that you're flying in. If there's a lot of wind, or if you're working in an enclosed space, you want to be in a very open space with minimal dangers, so less wind. You also don't want to be too close to the drone in case a bit of wind kicks up. It doesn't want to fly into you, and you just want to practice caution at all times.
I would say another thing is just your attitude when you're flying it. It's hard sometimes to want to be super professional, but if you have a drone and you're just using it, for recreational purposes, you want to just make sure to maintain that safety, be safety conscious at all times, because if you get a little too excited and you're trying to show off for your friends, you can make poor decisions.
I would also say that be open to the conversation. Drones are a great conversation starter. When you fly one, everyone shows up.
Oh, it has everybody.
So your first priority there is obviously to control the drone and everyone's safety, but then use it as an opportunity to talk about the power of science and the power of this imagery for protecting some of the wonderful landscapes of Belize, for example, as well.
Now, what I think is interesting is that where we already have opportunities for GIS, and now we're talking about having additional mapping available through drones and through multiple different ways. The access to information is growing so rapidly. How do you, in a workshop like today, use this as an opportunity to show where we can do more, but also do it in an ethically responsible way as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of why we work with Coastal Zone and why the partnership is developed is through our organization. Our research group is called Citizen Science GIS, and the emphasis is on the public good of these technologies. We believe very firmly that with access to data comes opportunity for saving life and protecting the environment. So one of the core principles we'll be stressing today is the notion of open data and sharing. And so again, as I said earlier, it's about bringing 10 to 15 organizations together that would otherwise be working independently, that can share that knowledge with the general public, and then ensure that we come up with an understanding of those ethical concerns that you mentioned, recognizing that we don't necessarily want to use this imagery to promote more unsustainable development, but we want to sort of focus on sustainable development and environmental management practices that protect the wonderful islands of Belize, for example, and the coast as well.
So tell us about some of the partners you'll be working with today.
Yeah, so there's several partners. First and foremost is Coastal Zone Management, our friends at the University of Belize, Mr. Antonio Cano, who is the one of the GIS lecturers at UB, and one of his staff members and students, I believe, is coming as well. WWF, one of our partners, will be there as well. TBSL, the country's GIS provider, will be there. And then I believe there's a few other organizations as well. So it's just going to be a great opportunity. Around 30 individuals will be there to learn about the technology, but again, more importantly, come together around these shared ideas to do something really special together that can benefit the people of Belize.
Right, awesome. So anything else you'd like to share with us about the upcoming training, or even for people to venture to use this type of technology outside of environmental science?
I think the biggest thing is, we're firm believers in the idea of creativity and knowledge driving innovation. So I think especially for the young people that might be watching this morning, recognize that your ideas have meaning and they have an opportunity to improve the public good, especially for the kids. So drones have a lot of opportunity. It's limited by your imagination and the ability to use the technology. So we'd encourage folks to just, think creatively and think about how you might use this technology for good.
All right. Anything from you guys?
Sums it up.
Parents, you can allow your child to use a mini drone, maybe. But thank you so much for coming in, and best of luck today with your training.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
We're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, if you're looking for a new hobby for the new year, then maybe it might be gardening. That's coming up after the break.